Welcome to the Heartbreak to Happiness show with Sarah Davison. If you're struggling with a breakup and you feel shocked, angry, betrayed, devastated, or sad and alone, then this podcast is for you. Best-selling author and award-winning host Sarah Davison shares how you too can get on with your life to heal, grow, and move from heartbreak to happiness. Here's your host, Sarah Davison.
Welcome back to the show, and today my guest is Min Grob. Min is the founder of CCChat magazine, which is a free online publication on coercive control, which is read in over 33 countries. She came to this as a result of her own lived experience of coercive control and has been campaigning, advocating, and speaking out since 2015. Min's mission is to make the invisible visible, and she hopes that coercive control is understood not only in an intimate relationship or family setting, but also in wider society. So I am super excited to welcome Min Grob to the show. Welcome, Min.
Hi, Sarah, and thank you so much for inviting me.
Well, I'm really pleased you're here, Min, because I know you're going to add a lot of value to my listeners, especially in the area of coercive control. So before we get into that, tell us a little bit about you and why you came to have such a strong passion for this subject matter.
I was in a very bad relationship, and I got out of that relationship a few years ago. And at the time, I couldn't make sense of what I was in. There wasn't really any physical abuse. There was a lot of emotional abuse, a lot of psychological abuse. And at the time, I didn't think that was as serious as physical abuse. So I thought that if I was impacted by it, it was because I was weak. I wasn't resilient enough. And I didn't really understand the impact of all of that. When I got out of the relationship, I read a book. The first book I read was Divorcing a Narcissist by Tina Swithin. And I was just blown away by it. It was just, oh my God, there was so much in there I could relate to. And as a result of that, I started looking online, trying to understand what it was that I had experienced and why it had such an impact on me. And that's when I came across coercive control. So I came across a few blogs and read up about it. I came across Evan Stark's book, and I realized that a lot of the stuff in there was something that I'd actually experienced. And it was at that point, so this would have been 2014, that I realized that there was a bill and that coercive control was in the process of being criminalized, but nobody really knew when it was going to happen and whether it actually was going to happen. So at that point, I'd experienced, I was working as solicitors. So basically, I was working at the solicitors to pay off his bill. We'd had, the court said that, we had to pay half of a solicitor's bill. He refused to pay. So rather than have the solicitors call in debt collectors, I actually contacted them and said, look, listen, can I pay off his part of the bill? Because I couldn't pay it in money. Could I pay it off in kind? So I spent a few months at the law firm working in the attic, filing. And then I progressed into, doing back office admin type stuff. And at the end, by the time I left, they were actually training me to be a legal secretary. And actually, it sounds grim, but I really enjoyed it. It was a fabulous firm. And at that point, I was working there and I noticed he was walking around, contacted the police, and they basically said to me, well, what do you expect us to do about it? He's allowed to walk around.
When you say walking around, Min, what do you mean? In the office that you were working in?
No, just outside the office. I was on reception duty and he was walking past the window several times a day, which of course, as you can imagine, created a lot of fear, a lot of anxiety in me. Went to the police, they basically said, well, there's nothing we can do about it. He can walk wherever. And so at that point, I thought, do you know what? The police just don't understand coercive control. How can I make them understand? And I suppose, looking back on it now, I laugh. But at the time, I had this idea in my head. Do you know what? I know exactly how I can make them understand. I'll organize a conference on coercive control, get all the speakers in, and then they will just by magic learn. And then, this won't happen to anyone else. Anyway, that of course didn't happen, but that is how I set up my first conference, which was in Bury St Edmunds at the Apex Theatre. And then that was only ever going to be a one-off, because I suppose that conference was a reaction to a poor police response. But the feedback from that was, you need to do them on an annual basis, you need to do a lot more. So I carried on doing that. And I think to date, I've had 5 or 6 national conferences. They've been smaller events. But since then, I've actually diversified and gone into producing an online magazine, which is, it's free. It's available to read wherever you are in the world, as long as you've got, the internet and probably, computer. And it's on and around coercive control, not just in intimate relationships, but also, around it, workplace settings, in schools, I look at coercion. I look at all kinds of areas in life where coercion and control exists, basically. So that's the idea.
I think that's an amazing story. I mean, from your own personal experience, negative experience with the police, the way they deal with it, and I'm with you on that. I'm sure there are some good police officers. My personal experience has been horrific with them. And they're welcome to come on my podcast and defend themselves. But as yet, I'm yet to be convinced. But yeah, I mean, I think, obviously we're talking UK here, because both you and I are based in the UK. Globally, though, from interviewing so many other experts around the world on this topic, there are issues, globally. So, I mean, first of all, before we get into, why that might be, what would you define coercive control to be? If there's people listening right now and they're like, well, I'm not really sure what it is, how would you describe it, Min?
I would define coercive control as, am I allowed to swear?
Well, for those of you who don't like swearing, cover your ears, because Min is about to swear. But yes, go ahead, Min.
For me, I found the easiest way to define coercive control is when someone does something to fuck with your head. I found that's the easiest way.
I think that's a great definition. I think that should be the definition.
I think it should be the definition, because if you actually look at the guidance notes by the CPS or the College of Policing, or you even look at the the statutory definition, I don't know about you, but I look at that and I go, oh, that's quite mouthy. That's quite difficult to get your head around. Whereas, someone fucks with your head, it's bespoke to the person. As what does that person do to undermine you, to subjugate you, to make you feel bad, to make you feel in fear, to isolate you, to basically what are the steps they take to basically affect your quality of life in a way that you are a lesser version of yourself. That's how I define it.
Absolutely. I mean, I think you're spot on. And actually, this is one of the problems. Don't you think, with the family court system, the legal system, the lawyers, the barristers, however well-meaning, the language is so antiquated, and it's so difficult to understand. It's like learning a new language, which is very intimidating. And there's a big part of me, being a cynic, that is thinking, is it designed that way to intimidate, to keep everyone underneath so that they can do their thing? I don't know. But I mean, I've had very toxic experiences myself personally in the family courts. I know thousands of people that I've worked with around the world, and also in all different countries, have very difficult experiences, unfair, unjust in a lot of cases. Maybe you could go as far as saying corrupt people working within the system in some cases. There are some good people out there, though. There are some good judges, good lawyers, good barristers. There are some great, outstanding, who can make a positive difference. And, you know, I'm championing them all the way. But, you know, if you have the misfortune of being on the other side with some, you know, not so lucky with who you come across in the system, it can be traumatizing, to say the least, right?
I totally agree with you. The biggest issue I have in all of this is the use of language, especially the use of jargon. Because if you're not in the in-group and understand the language, for example, if you're not a qualified lawyer, so you understand the language, if you're not in the in-group, you know, an advocate, understand the language, it's really difficult to get your head around it. And quite often, you know, bear in mind, you'll be wanting to get your head around it at a time where you probably have the lowest capacity for learning something new, because you're heavily traumatized, you're sleep deprived, you're highly anxious, you're hypervigilant, and you know, you're supposed to, you know, I don't know, look at something, read it, and take it on board, something that a professional would have taken years to ascertain and understand. I have a huge issue with that. Things just aren't easy for somebody who's traumatized and for a layperson.
You're so spot on with that, because yes, of course you're going to be traumatized. You know, you're going through a breakup. A divorce is known as the second most traumatic life experience we go through after death of a loved one, no matter who you are, wherever you are on the planet. And then on top of that, you're thrown into a system where the language is very different and it's very intimidating, and it makes you feel vulnerable because you don't understand it.
Yeah, I mean, what is a position statement? What is a bundle? It's all designed to put you on the back foot at a time where you really need all the help you can get to present your case well. You know, for the best interests of yourself, the children. Yeah, I have a big issue with that.
Yeah, no, I'm with you on that. I mean, obviously there are some phenomenal lawyers who will explain things, who are gentle, who are caring and kind, and you know, can tap into that emotional support as well, which is great. But obviously, you know, if you're doing this on your own, or you're up against a very aggressive law firm who are sending you intimidating letters, then that is something that can just be soul destroying. And you know, when you're already traumatized, you're vulnerable, and when you're vulnerable and you're getting aggressive letters, or you're thrown into very stressful situations, you know, in the hierarchy in a courtroom even, I mean, just understanding who says what and why you can't say certain things, and you've got to refer to the judge in a certain way depending on, you know, what level that judge is at. And it's just so much to take on board, and you don't want to upset anyone, you don't want to do anything wrong to jeopardize your case. So it is a fine line to navigate. So how did you get through that, for people listening, you know, who are thinking, gosh, this is where I'm at, this is what's going on, Min, for me right now? What would your advice be?
Well, I suppose I was quite lucky because I've got 2 years of a law degree, nothing beyond that. So I suppose there is a certain amount of grounding there. But my advice would honestly be, if you don't have a lawyer and if you're in court against an abusive ex, is you have to look after yourself. Treat it as an Olympic sport, because, you know, eat properly, sleep, even if it's just a whole series of naps, eat, even if, you know, it's milkshakes, you know, something that, you know, it's even if you have to force yourself, because you can't perform to the best of your ability when you're traumatized and if you're on a diet of kettle chips and wine. You know, soothing as though that sounds, that is probably my number one advice. You're looking at, you know, the chances are they'll be bombarding you with paperwork. You'll have a busy day, you'll be struggling with money, you'll be struggling with sleep, stress, struggling with the kids. So you need to be on your top game, or as top as possibly can be under the circumstances. And it's not easy, but that is definitely my number one advice.
because you have to look after yourself to put yourself in the best position. But, you know, as you said, it's kind of counterintuitive because some of you may not feel like eating. Some of you may be wanting to eat all the wrong food. Some of you may be going for the kettle chip and wine diets. I think we've all tried it at some point in our lives, right?
Definitely, yeah.
But, you know, you soon find out that doesn't work and has some pretty serious negative side effects as well. So obviously, you know, digging deep in those times when you're already feeling exhausted can be really challenging. So small steps, and, you know, not putting yourself on a strict diet, but just really watching and being aware of what you're doing. I agree. That is really, really good advice. You know, you talked a little bit there about the different things that can manifest as you come out of a toxic relationship. So whether that's stress, panic, maybe flashbacks, you know, triggering anger, sadness, depression. Yeah, how do you manage those? Because I mean, okay, you can go to therapy. That's one way of handling it. And obviously you can come to a coach like me or any of my accredited coaches. But, you know, if you can't afford that, or that's not for you, or there's a 2-year waiting list maybe for the free services, which I know over here at the UK, there's a huge waiting list for any mental health service at the moment. You know, what's your advice to help people navigate those difficult emotions that will come up?
I think my biggest advice is to identify which part of the day you're the most alert, because that'll be the part of the day where you do your paperwork, you do your you know, you look at your bundles, you write out your you know, your statement, and identify the days where you start to flag, the times in the day where you start to flag. Possibly that'll be where you know, rest, you recuperate. I found it really healing, really medicinal to go out for a walk. Just go out for a walk. I can't meditate. It has, for me, it has I associate it with something really negative, and there's nothing I can do to divorce one from the other. So my form of meditation, if you like, is to do something that requires a small bit of concentration, but not enough. So going out for a walk as you're thinking, so you don't have thoughts, you know, overwhelm you. They don't race as much because you're also having to concentrate on walking. Repetitive actions, like something I really like to do is make bread, make anything. I really like making gyoza. You know, those little sort of pastries filled with, you know, sort of get them in, you know, Wagamama. It's just doing little pastry cases like that. It's very repetitive, it's very soothing, and you can still think. So quite often I'll set myself a task that's quite sort of low maintenance, you know, doing puzzles, not massive 5,000 piece puzzles, but, you know, maybe something, I don't know, 200-piece puzzle. So you're not thinking too much, and then just let the thoughts flow. And quite often I find that by occupying a part of my mind, it allows the rest of my mind to order itself, and quite often I'll come up with a solution. And that also goes to panic attacks with breathing. Is, you know, you can breathe into a paper bag, but I don't know about you, but all that does for me is create more panic. Is what I'll do is focus on, you know, breathing. Now, lots of breathing techniques out there, but at the same time, do something else. You know, again, the puzzles, you know, listening to a not too exciting podcast, have music. And, you know, if you have a smartphone, they have so many games, you know, Scrabble, word search puzzles, whatever, that are, I find, are distracting, but not distracting enough for you to not want to do it, if that makes sense. So I think it's understanding how your panic manifests and trying to find pleasure in the things, and finding, you know, things that give you pleasure, and trying to sort of fuse the two is what's really helped me when really I haven't had the money for very much therapy at all.
Exactly. And there are things you can do. I always talk about, we control the remote control to our brain, but most of us don't know that. So we just react in the way that we always have, because maybe we learned to react in that way from, well, maybe it was an unconscious trigger, maybe it was from our parents, maybe it was, watching other people in our lives. Or maybe that was the way we learned that we should cope, like to hold it all in and not show anyone. Maybe, there's so many reasons why we react in the way we do, but we can dial those emotions down. We can, by using some of those tools that you've given us, which I think are amazing, just to take control a little bit and start to shift your focus onto other things, I think is really powerful. So thank you for sharing that. One of the hard things, I guess, is anger. Anger can be quite a debilitating, damaging emotion, negative emotion, because there's a lot of energy around anger, and all that energy being channeled at, I see this all the time from people at their exes, really stops them from not only moving forward with their own lives, but they're holding on to that bitterness, which is eating them alive themselves. Have you got any tips for dealing with that anger?
Yes, I do. And I think with anger, what I'd also like to add is that, especially for women, a lot of us, and certainly I was, a lot of us are socialized not to show the anger because it's a negative emotion. And if we become angry, there's something wrong with us. So it's taken me until my 50s to actually realize, you know what, it's okay to be angry. And it's okay to express that anger, as long as you do it in the right way. And so I think the first thing to do is to acknowledge that it's okay to be angry. And my favorite thing for anger is to bake bread. Have you ever seen, so make dough. And don't knead dough, don't sort of like knead it with your, the palm of your hand or anything. Just grab it and just whack it on the counter. Whack it, because that needs it. And then gather it together, whack it. It makes a really satisfying sound. Don't do as I did once and whack it so hard that half of it breaks off and hits you in the face, because that's not great. And then there's a mess to clear up as well. But it's boxing. I love boxing. Going for a really rigorous walk, dancing is a great one. When animals in the wild, when they're sort of, when they're in that sort of fight mode, when the danger has gone away, they shake themselves, they shake the adrenaline off. So what I do is, I dance, shake, jiggle, have, I don't know, have disco music on, have something loud, sing. And it's fun as well. And after that, it's cathartic, it's exhilarating, and it just resets you into a better place. And it's free, except for the bread dough.
And that's great. I mean, anything you can do. And I totally agree with the shaking it off. And it's really interesting that you're talking about the animals, because it's so true, right? After that, they do shake, don't they? And they sort of, and even when they just get up in the morning, they have a good shake. Well, my puppy does, and then off she goes for the day. So maybe that is a way of just releasing some of those emotions and shifting your state. So maybe we should all give ourselves a good shake.
I think, we should actually, I'm not joking, we should actually have sort of shake therapy, where instead of talking about our feelings or anything, it's like whack on some music and just all of us just shake, freestyle, shake the arms, shake the wrists, sort of wiggle the body, shake the legs, 20 minutes a day.
But twerking, maybe that's what we should all be doing.
Yeah, that too, but don't just twerk one area, twerk your whole body. Total twerk.
I love it. A total twerk. Right, guys.
Exactly.
I want you all to be practicing this tonight. I certainly will be, that's for sure.
Yeah, be twerkalicious.
Twerkalicious. I think we should get that in the dictionary. Brilliant. Thank you so much, Min. So where can people find out more about you? Can get access to your magazine? Where can we find it all?
Okay, so my magazine, the magazine is called CCChat, which stands for Coercive Control Chat. And it's available on my website, which is www.coercive, COERCIVE, control, CONTROL.co.uk. And the current issue is on the first page, and all the back issues are available there as well. Or if you want a PDF copy, you can just contact me via the website. There's a contact page, and I'll send you the PDF. And the magazine also, it's if anyone wants to tell their story anonymously, it's a platform for that. It's a platform for anybody who wants to talk about research they're doing, talking about their experiences, of professionals, their experiences as a professional. It's about just having the conversation as much as possible.
Much needed, more transparency, more openness about what's actually going on, more tools, more education, and more just kindness and support for people that are going through this, to help them navigate, especially if they're going through the family court system, having that support from others because people understand it. I think it's so important. Well, thank you so much, Min, for joining me. I have one last question for you that I ask all my guests, because my podcast is called Heartbreak to Happiness, because I think it's really important that we all know what happiness is for us, so that even when we are dealing with the follow on from coercive control and we're trying to rebuild our lives, we can tap into that happiness along the way. So what is happiness for you, Min?
Happiness for me is a walk on the beach when it's empty. The sky is blue, the sun is shining, it doesn't have to be summer. You can smell the sea air, and you've got a coffee in your hand, and you're walking and you're letting your thoughts just meld. That for me is happiness.
I love that. I love it. And I also love twerkalicious. So that's the word I'm taking away and I'm banking. Thank you, Min, for being such a fabulous guest.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I've really enjoyed this.
That's it for today's episode. Do head on over to www.coercivecontrol.co.uk to find out more about Min and all the amazing work she's doing. And I look forward to you joining me on our next episode.
That's it for today's episode of Heartbreak to Happiness. Don't forget to subscribe and leave a review to win a free ticket to one of Sarah's virtual retreats. The retreats are a transformative combination of live webinars with Sarah herself, coupled with empowering online video programs designed to help you cope better with your breakup and start feeling happy again. For more details, head on over to heartbreaktohappinesspodcast.com, where you can also get a copy of Sarah's free gift. Thank you, and join us again on the next episode for another dose of Heartbreak to Happiness.